Hello and welcome to our next webinar about growing your agency. My name is Frederick Valles. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Optmyzr. And I want to thank everybody for attending today to learn a little bit more about how to grow your business. We're very fortunate to have Mike Rhodes back yet again. This is the third session he's doing, so if any of you missed some of the previous ones, go and take a look on our YouTube channel. The videos are all on there, so that's on youtube.com, on the Optmyzr channel. So today, Mike's going to cover a little bit about growing your customer base, getting more clients for your agency. So I'll let him cover that in just a second. So Mike is one of the co-authors of the best-selling book on Google AdWords. He has been running successful agency and training classes, and he's based in Australia, so it's very early for him. So big thank you for getting up early to teach us what you have learned in many years being in this industry. And I do encourage discussion and questions, so I might chime in here and there as Mike tells us a little bit about what he's thinking, and I might give examples about my time at Google and now my time running Optmyzr and how this all resonates for me. But any of you, please do ask your questions in the questions panel. We'll be taking those throughout. I will also save some time towards the end. This is all being recorded, so anyone who's here will get a recording of the session, and we'll also post it on YouTube afterwards. So with that, I would like to ask people to tell us a little bit first about what your job function is. So quick question right there, so that we know who we're talking to today. And so I obviously don't work for any of these. I work for a SaaS company, a technology vendor. Mike, introduce yourself maybe a little bit, and what is your job function nowadays?
Yeah, my job function these days is a few things, coming up with crazy ideas for things to test, troubleshooting, really just helping the team. The team are just amazing. We talked about that on the last call, you know, the benefits of building a smart team so that you don't have to do the things that you know you shouldn't be doing anymore. I know I shouldn't be anywhere near the bookkeeping, anywhere near paperwork, anywhere near HR. There's a long list. So yeah, I get to do some really fun stuff today, which is speaking, and I do a lot of teaching and training and coming up with new things and going out and selling.
Cool.
So
and I think you as a presenter can't see the results of the poll, so I'll just quickly tell you, but we have 55% of people who are marketing consultants, 36% working with or for an agency, and then about 10% working on an in-house marketing team. So I think this is going to be super relevant for this audience, so I'm looking forward to it, so take it away.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and thanks again for having me. That's been up on the screen for a second, so you got a fair idea of what we're going to cover. I'll start, as I always do, with the you may be thinking, this was what I heard all the time. But when I was an eMyth consultant many years ago, in the previous life, I would hear this all the time. Mate, if I just had a few more clients, if I just had a few more covers in the evening, if it was a restaurant, if I just had a few more patients, if I just had a couple more clients a month, this would magically solve all of the problems in the business. And it was because of my eMyth training that we talked about systems and team first, because the way that eMyth worked was that the lead generation bit, the getting more clients, was towards the end of the first year that you did in eMyth Mastery. Because if I hand you 10 customers or 20 customers tomorrow, if you don't have all that in place, something breaks. And you might be thinking, yeah, that's fine, I'll deal with that breaking. I could just do with the extra customers, thanks. Or I'm just going to go get one or two. Well, because we're going to turn this into a bit of a system so that we have some predictability about this, we need the systems in place for the rest of the business first. Yeah, I realize that, yeah, go get one or two extra clients, just bump up the cash flow, but we're always busy. We're always, I'll come back to the system stuff later. That's why we're doing it this way around. The other big objection that I used to hear is, but I'm not a salesperson. And to that, I would say everybody in the business is selling, and you're always selling. And we'll talk a little bit about selling. I don't consider myself a salesperson, but of course I am. But I've never considered myself, I'd never call myself a salesperson. But selling is just essentially a transfer of energy, a getting somebody else excited in the result that you've got for them. And so we'll talk a bit more about that as we go. And for me, this is super important because I just see so many, well, sharks really, particularly in our industry, in the world of internet marketing. There's an awful lot of people doing this for the wrong reasons or coming at this the wrong way, I personally believe. I think the mindset here should be one about giving, not taking, a mindset of service. So you don't want to be a servant to your client. You're there of service, and you want to maintain that peer-to-peer relationship. They should never be pointing down at you and, I need this done, how high are you going to jump? I don't think that's a sensible relationship, but it should be a generous one. And I was reading some stuff the other day. I find this gets talked about a lot. Business gets compared to war a lot. I was actually at an event at Google a couple of months ago with about 20 other agency owners, and there were more than a couple people in the room who had this sort of mentality. Business is war, win at all costs, bugger the other guy, and I just don't really subscribe to that way of thinking. And it struck me the other day when I was looking at this word Marshall, that if you just take the eye and move it a little bit, you get the real game. I think this whole game is about relationships, and good relationships build slowly, and you start with dating, which is the lead gen side, and hopefully you get married and they go on and become a client. So I just thought it was an interesting play on words, that it's the same letters, but I think marital and relationships, focusing on relationships, not can I beat the other guy, is the better way to go. So we'll start with who is that ideal client, because I think unless you're clear on who you want, then you're going to accept everybody. I know I did when I was starting out a long time ago. You'd say yes to just about anybody that crossed your path. And what I'm noticing, and those working in maybe bigger agencies hopefully will agree with this, but the bigger you get, the quote unquote more successful you get, it's about saying no as much as it is about saying yes. It's who to say no to. Sean Ellis was interviewed on Kevin Rose's podcast the other day, and he said that was one of the secrets to his success, was just working with the right businesses. So he had a very, very clear idea of who he wanted to do growth hacking for. So get clear on that. Do you want to work just with e-com businesses, or just with lead gen businesses, or just with lawyers? I wouldn't recommend it. What size business? Are you working with $1 million businesses, $10 million businesses, $100 million businesses? Because it's a very, very different process. What sort of size is that in terms of people? Do you like working with very small businesses, or do you want to work with a small part of a much, much, much bigger industry, entity? And the last question there, what problems do you solve? I think that's a really crucial one. Like, what fascinates and motivates you? Don't provide a service just because you think the market needs it, but it has no interest to you. Do stuff that you are preferably uniquely genius level at, or that your team is unique genius at. Don't try and do everything for all people. Just focus in on that thing. Now, that's a tricky part, because I've heard specialization is for insects. You can't specialize. You've got to do everything. Well, we'll talk about getting known in a sec, but I think it's much, much easier to specialize, be known for one thing, than to try and do all things to all people and be the generalist. It's much easier to sell the specialist than the generalist. So particularly if you're starting out, which more than half of us on the call are, I think it's easier to try and say, right, own this one, maybe two things, and do those extraordinarily well. Don't do everything. So. Who? Because this makes a huge difference. I mean, obviously in the way you talk to them, business owners just want to talk about ROI and profit. Many marketing managers are getting there and starting to talk about ROI and ROAS, but many still want to talk about, we had one the other day, they're no longer a client. This is going back a couple of years. New marketing manager came in, existing client, and all she wanted to talk about was changing the logo to lowercase. Well, yeah, can we talk about CPA and leads and how we make you money? With that relationship didn't last very long, needless to say, because we just didn't feel we could add value to someone like that. I think your job with the marketing manager, I think your job is to make them look good. So understanding their world deeply, understanding who they report to, how they report, what their KPIs are, what their personal pet projects are, all of that stuff becomes super important. With the business owner, it's a much more straightforward conversation, and the business owner doesn't tend to change jobs every 2 years, which I believe is the current average tenure for a marketing manager, something like 18 months or 19 months, which is crazy. Also get very clear on who you don't want. I said the other day that I had a no dickheads, no lawyers policy. We stick to that. Get clear on who you don't want to work with. Do you not want to work with e-com? Do you not want to work with corporate? Do you not want to work with a two-man band? We don't do, or very, very, very rarely will we do any startups. Someone that's got this great idea and, oh, you know, funds are unlimited when the ROI is there. They all say that, don't they? Be very clear on that and know who you want. And yeah, don't be afraid to say no. I got a new accountant about 6-7 years ago. One of the first exercises he had me do was to list all of my clients down at the time and grade them A, B, C. And at the time, I think C's for me back then were $400 a month, $397 a month. I think that's where I started. The B's were about $700 or $800 a month, and the A's were $1,500 a month, there or thereabouts. And the rule was to fire the C's, to give the B's a chance to become A's, and to only hire A's from that point on. And I was shit scared, excuse the French. I really was like, how? But there can't be many other people in Australia that be willing to pay $1,500 a month. Oh my God! Oh, I don't know what's going to happen. And it was the best thing I ever did for the business. So I would highly recommend doing that exercise. You don't have to rush out and fire the C's, but get very clear that you're not going to accept any of those in anymore. You may well want to fire them, or at least give them a chance to become B's, if not A's, and upsell them into other services. Yeah, go on.
Mike, so rather than firing them, did you ever look at selling them to maybe an agency who was more focused on those small customers and maybe who had more of a specialty business working exclusively with plumbers or some other category that actually made sense?
Yeah, great idea. I didn't. I mean, I didn't have too many of them at that point, and we gave them a chance. We basically priced them out. We gave them a chance to grow, and I said, like, yeah. But I value loyalty, so I found this really hard. You know, some of these people have been with me from the beginning, and have been a client at that point for probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. And so to just turn around and say, right, you know, your fee has to go up. So you can do that in an elegant way, and some of them are still with me today, 10 years on. So the price went up and the price went up and the price went up, but we're also delivering value the whole way along the line, and we're showing them that value and doing more, and their budgets are going up. So yeah, we're going to be charging them more. Not that we charge a percentage of spend, but we're providing additional value. But yeah, I didn't actually sell them on to another agency.
Right. And I recently did a blog post as well, and I actually recommend that advertisers should be asking their agencies where they fit into the ABC or whatever tiering it is. Because ultimately, I think doing your small clients a favor. If you weren't going to pay attention to them anymore, it's kind of wrong to keep taking their money. All right. So at least you were upfront about it and kind of set that expectation. And for those that couldn't afford more, at least they were able to hopefully go and find a better solutions provider that still wanted to work with them. And I think that's what I was seeing too when I was doing an agency. Like, you kind of keep upping your fees. You want to work with higher level clients. And so it's always tricky, like, because the small ones sometimes take up even more time because they're not as sophisticated, right? And how does
the squeaky wheel gets the oil often. And often it's much better to just remove the squeaky wheel. But yeah, sometimes those small ones. I mean, so yeah, a lot of Google's competitions and so on, and I'm sure the freelance consultants can resonate with this one. All their stuff is around net new, And so you're supposed to bring in all these people that have never been on the platform before and play the fun games in Google Partners and get the rewards and get a fridge or whatever it is. But those net new people that want to spend $500 a month, they can be incredibly interesting to deal with. A lot of education needed. Whereas, yeah, that smart CMO who just says, yep, they know the ROI on that 100 grand a month, and you keep providing it, and you keep talking to them about the new betas and doing some cool new stuff that they get to tell stories to the board about, and you give them a gorgeous dashboard, and they're just happy with the results, and they leave you alone, and they just leave you to get on with it. I mean, that's our ideal client. Just leave us to get on with it. Let's have a chat once a week about what's working, what's not, what the plan is, and let's go. And that relates to this, which is a Dan Sullivan term. Know your minimum check. So know what you're willing to tolerate. What's the least that you're willing? And again, being happy to say no to someone. I'm a bloody sucker. I really am. Like, someone will come in and we got this thing, this great idea, but the business is doing this, and and I'm like, I want to help, and I want to spend an hour on the phone with them, and I want to dig in, but I've learned that that's not the best thing for the business. It might be what I want to do, but I need to do what the business needs me to do and what the team need me to do. My job here is to support them and to support the business. I'd like to flip that org chart and not put the CEO at the top, but put the CEO at the bottom, supporting the teams above him or her. So this for me has been a hard one, but an absolutely critical one. And Dan Sullivan's thing is to then keep growing that minimum check. So, again, when you're grading your ABCs, who are your top A's? How much rev did you get from them over the past year? And trying to increase that, not growth for growth's sake, but just to keep growing profitably and to understand who the small ones are. And there's lots of reasons to keep those. It's not just about the money. It could be some people there that you really, really enjoy working with, or they're a wonderful source of referrals, or they're a great name to have for the agency that you accidentally drop into sales presentations every now and again. Guilty as charged. There's lots of reasons, but knowing at least who those squeaky wheels are or who the team hate dealing with. I just don't, we talked about freedom of purpose last time. I don't want my team to have to work with anybody that I wouldn't want to work with. And so we'll give those guys an opportunity to work with someone else every now and again. One option is picking an industry. So here's a very, very small list of industries that I've seen people, we've done consulting for and audits for people that sort of specialize in industries like this and others, being known, which I'll talk about in a sec, within an industry, speaking at the roofing convention, not necessarily speaking at SMX. That's great if you're Fred or Brad or someone. That's wonderful, but far more powerful if we're talking getting clients to go speak at the roofing convention and go provide value to that group of people and be the guy or girl in that industry. And ultimately, last one in this section is just a reminder, again, Dan Sullivan talks about this all the time. If you're building your own business, if you own the agency, if you're a freelance consultant, you've decided to be an entrepreneur, you've decided to be responsible for your financial future for the rest of your life. There's a point where I think you become reasonably unemployable by someone else after you've had your own business for a while. You get to set the rules. Don't set the rules that make you miserable or that make you bang your head against the wall or whatever it is. Set it up the way that you want to do it. One rule for me is getting paid in advance. Again, that was another Dan Sullivan thing. I'm going to mention his name a couple of times today. I heard him speak 16, 17 years ago, and he talked about having a no receivables business. Get paid in advance, and you don't waste any time or money chasing the money coming in the door. Now, we bill most of our clients at the beginning of the month. There are a couple, because I like loyalty, that are on the old system, but I think our average accounts receivable days is 7. If most businesses out there are probably in the 60 to 90 range, in our industry, most are probably in the 30 to 45 range. But I do know of agencies that have AR of 90 days, which is insane, in my opinion. They're just taking on far, far too much risk. So I think that at least 80% plus should be paid in advance and recurring rev. So if we're talking about the model, I was chatting to a web designer the other day about they've been doing it, I don't know, 25 years, did the usual story, started in print, started building websites. They're just sort of dipping their toe into AdWords and Facebook and wondering what this whole game is about. Right now, they have to go hunt and kill every day. If they don't bring new business in, they don't eat type thing, which is not a place you want to be. So if you're starting out, if you add that, I think 55%, you said freelance consulting, definitely set this up from the beginning so that you can win. So recurring revenue, paid in advance, you have a fair idea what your cash flow is coming into the month, rather than hoping that you can go find 5 new clients every month. Everyone's heard the stat, it's much easier to keep a client than to get one. That's what that's about. If you can keep delivering value and showing value and making it, you get to do this stuff better and cheaper and faster than they could do themselves, because they've got to go hire the person. They're not sure who they're hiring. This person supposedly is going to be an expert at AdWords and Facebook and creating banners and dealing with pivot tables and writing scripts. Those are very unlikely skills to all find in the one brain. So that's the value that you can bring to the table, and do it much more efficiently than they can do it themselves, because they're going to do it in the interface and not use a great tool like Optmyzr. So get to the bit that you want, which is, how do you go get them? Please, Mike. Well, you've heard this before. It ain't what you know, it's who you know. I personally think that's bollocks. I think it's who knows you that is important. So therefore the question becomes, how do you get known? I'll start with the mindset, which for me is creating value. Always coming at it from that side. So again, being generous with that, being of service, and creating value for others. This is, if I know there are plenty of people out there that are just looking to churn and burn. I won't mention any of the big agency names, but we all know who they are, that just want to go grab more businesses in, maybe 100, maybe 200 a month, and they don't really care what happens to them after that. I'm not interested in building that type of business. Hopefully you're not either. Probably the best example of this comes from Richard Abraham, a wonderful book called Mr. Schmooze. It's SCHMOOZE, I think. And he talks about the Oprah effect of essentially, why did Oprah get so big? And there's a whole bunch of reasons, but one of them is this idea of what he calls the glow. So you would sit down, I don't know, you're a 42-year-old housewife in the afternoon, you sit down to watch Oprah at, I don't know what it was, 3 in the afternoon. You would get up from the couch an hour later feeling a little bit better than you did when you sat down. And so you want to do more of that the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And he took that idea and said, well, do that in your business. What if in every single encounter that you had with a client, every email you wrote, the report you send them, every phone call, you aimed to leave them feeling a little bit better about stuff at the end than at the beginning? Sounds ridiculously simple, I know, but just next time you write that email, before you hit send, just stop for a second, go back and go, how could I just tweak that a little bit? How could I change that first line so I don't just go, blah, 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 and dive straight into the reply? How could I be a little bit more friendly, push a little bit more energy into that, and have them come out of that feeling a little bit better? Great book, by the way, Richard Abraham, Mr. Schmooze. The other one is be a big fish in a small pond. So again, don't be just another guy doing the commoditized thing. Go and be the person for that little area. Now that might be your town, your city, it might be that little niche within a niche in an industry, whatever it might be. But again, it's about, I think, not being all things to all people and saying yes to absolutely everything that comes your way. Obviously, what we all want is word of mouth. Reward your referrals. When you do get referrals from other people, do nice things for them. I was just chatting to someone the other day about a referral we got last year. We sent the guy a $500 Lego kit because I knew he had a son who was 14. I knew they loved doing Lego together. They're in the States, we're in Australia, so I sent him a Sydney Harbour Bridge $400 Lego thing, got it delivered from Amazon. He loved it. I would rather do something like that and give someone an unusual, unexpected and personalized gift than paying them a little piece of the monthly retainer month after month after month. Another one we'll do often is give money to charity on someone's behalf. So I'll reach out to them, find out who their favorite charity is, and then donate some money to their favorite charity, not ours, when they refer a client. It could be as simple as sending them a nice bottle of wine or a slab of beer if that's more appropriate, or plate of cookies. Sending stuff. We got some referrals last year from an agency, and so we sent them some food that the whole agency could share, plate of cookies or cupcakes or something. I think it was cupcakes with a message written across the top of the cupcake. Laura Moxham in the UK sends balloons with personalised messages on, which I thought was a nice touch. I mean, it literally costs like $20-30, but it has an impact, and it leaves them, again, with that emotional glow. For me, and I dare say for you too, probably Fred, speaking has been one of the biggest ways that I've grown the agency, and that came about from something Kiyosaki said to me about 16, 17 years ago, which was that one-to-one is too slow. You need to learn how to sell one-to-many, or at least talk one-to-many. So I took a job in 2004, 2005 as a business manager of an events management company that had a speaking division and put on events. So the reason I took that was to be able to put myself on stage and learn how to speak. And I was absolutely bloody terrified the first 487 times I did it. I still get nervous before going on stage, but I've learned to enjoy it. And it is the best, for me, the fastest way to grow business. Now, Kiyosaki also talked about when Oprah came calling, he was ready to go on that show because it wasn't the first time that he was doing media. The first time he was on a show, he built himself up by doing all of the hard roads. Everybody sort of looks at a Fred or a Brad at SMX and goes, oh, it'd be great to be doing that, but they don't see the 10 years of hard work that went into that. So 10 years ago, I remember speaking for free at the Richmond Library just down the road here to a group of, I don't know, about 12 people on a cold Tuesday night, and going in and talking about Google AdWords. Didn't get any business out of that. I think nobody in the room had 2 pennies to rub together, but it was practice, and it was delivering value, and it was starting to get known. And
right, back to your point about it's who knows you, right? So you may not get business that same day, but eventually it grows, and I totally agree. So for me, it's been one of the major drivers of growth for Optmyzr is blogging for search engine land, speaking at conferences, and basically being to that point where people know how I think about PPC, and when they actually have a need for a tool, they know where it's coming from, right? They know what I think about PPC, and so they either like it or they don't, but they trust it by the time they actually discover the tool. And so I think it's immensely valuable, and I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's not just another SaaS, and everybody's trying to push their tool, and nobody needs another tool, but they're buying you as much as anything, and your mindset and your values. And if you don't want to get on stage, podcasting is a great way to dip your toe into that world. It's a great way to practice, and again, start with the smaller podcasts that 3 people and their mum listen to, but at least get the practice of doing that and starting there. Webinars like this one. Yesterday I spoke to Brian Kurt's Titans group, which is an immensely amazing group of very, very, very good copywriters. And you think, oh, why would you speak to a bunch of copywriters? I was speaking about Google Display, and there's a bunch of media players. The client list that these guys have is amazing. That came about because I spoke on Ken McCarthy's not even podcast, it's like an internal thing that he did at short notice to help somebody out who was a client. So it's like playing the long game. It's you're not looking at, oh, do I do this one? What can I get out of it? It all adds up. It all adds to people knowing you. It all adds to your practice. It's all giving value. I think, again, if you come at it from that mindset of, can I help? Can I give generously? And is this thing going to help? Then long term it works. Karma works. I mean, you mentioned search engine land. Start there. Start with blog posts. I've started blogging with the guys at Digital Marketer, and they've got a wonderful system now. I can literally take a webinar like this, or I can sit down and screen flow an idea for 10, 15 minutes, and they'll turn that into a blog post for me that they then send back for me to tweak, and they'll even take the images for the blog post out of the webinar or out of the ScreenFlow, which is a fantastic system. And yeah, and you know, Ginny is known because she's always breaking the news and always, you know, blogging about the new stuff. So that's, if you prefer to write and the idea of getting on stage terrifies you, then start with that.
Right, and I think you're referring to Ginny Marvin from Search Engine Land, and
yes,
so she always talks about the new stuff in AdWords, but she doesn't know everything, right? So once in a while we discover a new beta, and it's not confidential information. So
like the dashboard thing the other day.
Exactly right, and we send her a tweet, and then you get a tip of the hat, or at least some sort of a mention, and that's one way to start building your name. So you attack it from all angles, like you're saying.
And I think the trick with that, and what I've been certainly taught to do, and I certainly don't do it, but I'll pass it on anyway as good advice, is, just do one thing every day. Send a handwritten thank you note one day. Write a blog post one day. Call someone to say, hey, could I be a guest on your podcast? Or ask a friend, do you know anybody whose podcast I could be on, and could you introduce me? Far better to be introduced by somebody, obviously, than for you to approach somebody direct. And start at the bottom. Who was it? Ryan Holiday. What was that book called? Trust Me, I'm Lying. Go read that book if you want to sort of understand how to sort of start at the bottom and level up and level up. That is a fascinating, fascinating read. My mate Dave Jenyns wrote Authority Content. His system for creating sort of lots of content, if we're going down that road, is to create a workshop. It might be just an hour or two. It could be a half or a full day. Get it videoed, and then take that video, chop that up, and now you've got 20, 30 little videos that you can sprinkle around on YouTube or on your Facebook channel, or that you can send to other people. Rip the audio of that. Now you've got lots of little short podcast episodes or something that you could go drop onto SoundCloud. Get those transcribed on Rev very, very cheaply. Now you've got the guts of a bunch of blog posts or a book. D.
Right.
Jackson.
So for myself, it's definitely about repurposing content, and oftentimes it comes from like an all-day training session I do. So you have to kind of create new content on the latest about bid management or audience targeting.
Yeah.
That then turns into blog posts. But one thing I would caution against, like my personal experience, like I've never been successful with having somebody else take a big piece of content and distill it down and still have it reflect your voice and your actual opinion. So I end up spending a lot of time just rewriting stuff and redoing it myself, because I just don't think it's good enough if somebody else does it. It loses some of what I'm trying to convey. Obviously, kudos to anyone who can do it. It's much more scalable, but I have not been successful with that.
Okay, let's go. Dean Jackson created this business because he started doing this for clients and friends, and now it's a business, and they have created hundreds of books. Essentially, you literally spend 90 minutes and you end up with a book. Now, basically, that 90 minutes is outlining what you might talk about and then being interviewed by somebody for about an hour. And the book is essentially a slightly tidied up version of the transcript of that. So it's not going to be the world's best book. It's not going to be on the New York Times list anytime soon. But that idea of a book as a posh business card, and that's what the Ultimate Guide has been for me. I haven't made really any money from that, and it is, as Fred said, the world's best-selling book on Google AdWords, and I think we're up to about 100,000 copies. Now, I came in late. I must put my hand up here. I did not, wasn't part of the whole 100,000, but my name's on the book, and we've just written the new one, and it's been a fantastic tool for the business. Yes, I'm not suggesting that you rush out and write the book on Google AdWords. That's kind of being done. Brad's got a good one too. Sorry?
And if anyone's going to go the route of writing a book, there is something that takes a bit more than 90 minutes, but it's called Book in a Box. It's not cheap. It costs about $20,000 last time I checked, but it's the same principle. So they will write the outline. You'll do something like 20, 30 hours of interviews, and then professional writers will turn it into a good book.
Right.
So obviously, you kind of get what you pay for, right? If you make that larger investment of time, you actually do have a chance of becoming the best-selling book in a certain category. One of my favorite stories, and maybe you were going to tell this one too, but like one PPC guy, he got up on stage and he was like, I've got the best-selling book for PPC for injury attorneys. And I'm like, wow, that's really specific, but there's actually a category on Amazon for very specific things, and if you can be the best-selling book in a very niche category.
Facebook ads for roofing contractors. I mean, why not? And then give that book away to the roofing contractors, because these things, I don't know how much Dean's books cost, but they ain't going to be much. It's Create Space, delivered through Amazon. It's probably a few bucks per book, but the proof that brings with it, the social proof, the credibility that brings with it of a real physical book, and like 90% of them aren't going to read it anyway. Probably most of them won't even crack the cover, but the fact that you send them a book with a proposal, or you give away a copy of your book at the speaking thing that you do at the roofing trade show, it just has, for now, it still has weight and credibility. I haven't heard of that particular book, but it's a good example. We're all in the ad game. Don't forget to run your own ads every now and again, at least some remarketing. Now, I personally have not found that running search ads for AdWords management has ever worked. Larry and the boys over in the UK have managed to make it work for them. Most of the ads I see are sponsored links or some of those guys, and I think the vast majority of people that will jump onto Google and search for AdWords management, spelled with 2 Ds in the space, are looking to spend $200, $300, $500 a month. So I haven't found that a good source of leads for us. So we don't personally do that, but there's obviously a lot of different types of ads that you could run these days: YouTube, Gmail, Facebook, remarketing, etc., etc. And obviously the power of partnerships. Find someone that's got the customers that you want. I was chatting to a guy the other day. He's now looking at partnering up with so I guess I can say the name of the software is Clinico, which does software for physio and chiro and osteo clinics. They have the customers, partnering with them to deliver value to their customers. And again, that might start as a webinar, or it might start at speaking at one of their events, or it might even start with blogging. God, I remember back when I was an eMyth guy, this is a long time ago, I wrote a piece about, it wouldn't have been Google AdWords because it was 2001, 2002, and I didn't know about AdWords in 2002, which is about when you started Google, I think, for Flooring Magazine Australia, or Flooring Monthly Australia, or something like that. I was just delighted to see my name in print, and this sort of 2 or 3 page article or something on online and what it could mean for their business. That was my very, very first time being published. I do not have a copy of that. My mum probably does. But that's a very, very basic partnership. If you want to specialize in Magento businesses that are $10 million plus, then go find a Magento agency, because they probably don't do AdWords very well, because they do Magento very well. Or good old digital marketing. Direct mail, postcards. Postcards aren't dead. Most people's actual physical mailboxes these days are relatively empty. It's their inbox that's full of junk these days. Dean Jackson has a service there, the world's most interesting postcard. I've just seen the time. I need to hurry up. Right. Once they've found you, now what do you do? Here's a sort of simplified version of one of our systems where the lead comes in. We put them through Taki Moore's triage call, ask them a few questions. Then they go into needs analysis. Do we want this client? Remember, saying no can be more powerful than saying yes. Then we might do an audit or maybe just a mini audit. We might send them the results of that as a video. We won a client a couple of weeks ago by just doing a 24-minute video of their account. And the guy, who was a very, very smart marketer and very well connected, said he'd never seen AdWords explained so well and showed such a knowledge of the whole system, the interface, what the stuff behind it. He was blown away by that video, and we got the gig because of that. Then they get one and then move it into the onboarding process, and then there's another process for that. I do need to speed up. All right, let's go. Sales is a disqualification process. It's not selling yourself to them. Taki has a wonderful line, which is, your job is to assess, not impress. Far too many times I've been guilty of that, jumping on the call and trying to impress them with all of the stuff I know about the details of AdWords. They couldn't give a shit about that stuff, quite frankly. Assess them. Are they a good fit for you? Do you want them? And there's some questions there to help with that. One of my favorite questions to ask a prospect at the beginning, again, comes from Dan Sullivan. So jump on YouTube, search for R factor question. The R stands for relationship. If we were sitting down to have a chat 3 years from now, what needs to have happened for you to be happy with the result? And that can be both professionally and personally, or just professionally, whatever it is. But we're sitting down, having this chat a year or 3 years from now, what needs to have happened for you to be happy with the result? It's a fantastic question. And what Dan says is, if they're not willing to answer that question, it shows a lack of trust, which is probably a big sign that something isn't right. If they do answer that question, listen. The old, your granny used to say to you, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. The game is about listening. And watch for red flags. What do they say but not do? What do they actually do? How do they behave? And think about this in terms of profit, not just rev. We have either turned down or ended up firing clients that looked really, really good from a revenue point of view, but again, like your point before, Fred, about the squeaky wheel gets the oil. It was clear that this was not a profitable client, that far too much money was going in, and so we offered them a new price. They said no. And it was funny, again, when I was at that Google event last year, there were a couple of guys in the room that said, don't fire clients, mate, give them to me. I'll take them. To which my reaction was, that would be lovely. I'm more than happy to give my competition the pain in the ass clients that are rude to your team, that don't pay on time. They were just looking at revenue. We didn't actually give them the client. I would rather fire a client. I wouldn't do that to someone I know, to hand them a client like that. But if they're, well, I'll talk about this a bit later, but if they're rude, they're gone. Proposals, feel free to grab that short link. So I'll give you a second to write that one down. That's a copy of it is a bit of an old one now, but it's a starting point. If you're freelancing, that might be useful for you. I spoke to a guy just 2-3 weeks ago, and he had used this. They're relatively new in the industry. They had a big new client. They'd driven down to London to go see them, and they used basically the guts of this exact proposal that you can go grab, and they're just about to win a very, very big new client. He believes all the signs are good, and he just wrote to say that thank you for that proposal. It's a longish one, but you're welcome to it. Things I include in a proposal: restate their goals, present the issues that you found and therefore the opportunity with fixing those issues, pricing options, which I'll talk about in just a second, and a little bit of blurb on why you. I've shortened our proposals over the last few years. I used to, that one that you've got is maybe 10 pages long. I tend these days to be about 3 pages. The idea being I'm just making it easier for them to say yes, and therefore easier for them to sign off on it. Getting a long proposal is a bit like getting a book. It's like, oh, I'll get to that later. And do you need proposal software? There's loads of these things around now. Personally, I don't use them because I would prefer to do that proposal in person or on a webinar, sort of like jump on Zoom and present, here are the issues, here's the opportunities, and then present the price live, so that way you can counter the objections live rather than doing it all in print. Or worst case, just send them an email. Couple of things on pricing. I love Dan Ariely's stuff. So you can find TED Talk by Dan Ariely. If you don't want to read the whole book, you'll find a bunch of YouTube videos. But the one that really stood out for me, and the one that I've been using for about 7 years, is this idea of a price anchor and a price decoy. So this is the decoy. A cup of coffee for $5. Because what really people want is the cup of coffee with the cupcake for $5.50, particularly when I tell them that the cupcake is worth $4. Because your brain automatically goes to $4 worth of value for just another 50 cents, and now fear of loss kicks in, and I don't want to lose, quote unquote, lose the $3.50 of free stuff. This is how my wife shops. I saved you money, darling, it was on sale. But this is the main thing that I want people to take. By offering loads of extra perceived value for very little actual cost, more people are going to pick this. And then I have my price anchor, which is where you get a lot at a much, much higher price. So I did a course with Perry Marshall a few years ago. This is the first time I tested this. We had the basic price was, I think, $950. The main one that I wanted everybody to take was $990. So it's all of the stuff for that $950 plus this, plus this, plus this, valued at maybe another $1,000. You get it for $40. So everybody should be picking that. And then we had the high-end one, which I think was $4,990, which was everything in the middle pack, plus 4 hours one-on-one with me, which values my time. And if you don't have this one, the big high one, you don't know how much money you're leaving on the table. There's always one idiot in the restaurant that wants the most expensive bottle of wine in the restaurant. So offer it, because every now and again, someone will take it. So you're welcome to rip this off. This is, again, an old one with old pricing, but it gives you the general idea. You've got the big one, which helps set the scene, because after I've looked at $5,000, 2.5 seems quite cheap by comparison, and 2.5 compared to 1950. It'd be better if those two were a little bit closer in price, maybe 2450 and 2250. Generally within about 10%, I find works really well. But you get a lot of extra stuff for not much extra money, and almost everybody picks the middle version. When I did the thing with Perry, we had well over 100 people pick the middle one. 3 people picked the cheap one, I don't know why, and 6 people grabbed the big one, and they want it again. They've just, I value that time. That's $24,000 that we would have left on the table if we hadn't offered the higher price one. A couple of notes on the ongoing client relationship. Relationships are absolutely massively critical. For the first many years of this business, I didn't ignore that, but I definitely prioritized results over relationships. So we would send written reports rather than call clients and talk to them. And it was Ed Dale, who's a wonderful marketer here in Australia, that made me realize this. He said, when do you call your clients? I said, occasionally. But do you call them when things go wrong? Oh, yeah, of course, we'd call them if things go wrong. And when do you send them a report? Oh, we send them a report monthly. And when do you send an invoice? Yeah, monthly. Okay, so you're training them that the only time they hear from you is when there's a bill to pay or something goes wrong. That's not a good place to be. They're not going to look forward to getting a call or getting a communication from you. The opposite of the Oprah effect, in fact. Talk to them more frequently, even if it's just a, hey, how you going, what's going on with business? If you do AdWords, talk to them about any changes planned with the website. You got new thank you pages coming, because you don't want to get sidelined or sideswiped when their web dev goes and builds 14 new fancy landing pages and thank you pages and doesn't let you know about it, and all of your tracking dies and you don't have any good results for a while. We've all been there, right? So prioritize the relationship. And again, that book, Mr. Schmooze, which may sound like it's a selling, slimy book, it's not. It's a great book about relationships and building relationships. Richard Abraham. So regular phone calls, like I said, gorgeous dashboards. We tried everything before settling on Optmyzr. I went through Sife and Swido and a whole stack of other stuff, and I've been using Optmyzr for reports for the longest time. Sorry, Fred. We are now using Data Studio for some reporting, in addition to Optmyzr, because there's a bunch of stuff that Data Studio doesn't do yet, but those two in combination are really powerful.
I was going to say Data Studio is awesome, but because they're not PPC specific, they don't do stuff like ad text reporting. I mean, you can sort of include it, but it won't look like a proper ad text. But we welcome the competition, and it sort of sets a new bar for us. So we're working hard to make it as good as we can. But thank you.
And your blog post on Search Engine Land about that was really good a couple of months ago. One thing, the reason I put this in here was just to remind me to say to you, maybe having that option to put sort of like a different cover page. And again, I don't know if this actually might be an option already, but this our graphic designer in-house has made these front pages for the data studios, and I think it just sets the tone by having this gorgeous picture that we pull from their website as a front page for the report, rather than what we used to have was just sort of the blank white sheet with a logo on it.
You can actually do that. We can have
maybe that's an easy fix.
Design. We can have footers on every page that you design.
Yeah.
You can put in as much work as you want, or do it as more cookie cutter as you want. But yeah, no,
I love those instant reports too, where I can just quickly dive in and do a bit of a what's changed report, and being able to filter out search partners or mobile and tablet on the fly, and that's a brilliant feature of Optmyzr. I love that.
Thank you. And it's kind of interesting because I obviously did do that blog post about comparing and contrasting Data Studio and kind of positioning it as a really good option for agencies. So in a way, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot from the Optmyzr perspective, but at the end of the day, I'm also thinking about my credibility and the credibility of my company, right?
Yeah.
Talking about great options that are out there, and honestly, if you can get a free reporting solution that does much of what we do, maybe that is a good thing for you to know about. And ideally, customers will trust me to the degree they'll actually come to me and say, hey, listen, wouldn't it be great if you could do X, Y, and Z, and it'll help me be better.
Yeah.
So retain my, maybe we'll lose a couple of customers right now, but they'll be back because at some point, we'll do something really cool.
We'll work out all the other things there. I mean, if you're only using Optmyzr for reporting, you're insane.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so much in it. Go see your clients occasionally, and now, yeah, I've never met probably half of our clients because they're overseas. But I will make a point if I'm in the States. Hey, are you going to be in LA? Are you going to be in San Diego? Are you near there? Could I pop over and see you in Portland? There's still a bunch I haven't met, but hopefully I'll get to meet them all eventually. Go break bread with them. Go have a meeting and make it near lunchtime so you can meet them and then go to lunch and buy them lunch, or have lunch and then hang out, or even go and have dinner with them. I know that may sound crazy to some people and blindingly obvious to others, but it is just a much better relationship once you break bread with someone. And communicate value, but to the right person. That was a distinction that I made a little late in the game. We started focusing on communicating value, but we hadn't really realized that occasionally we were actually communicating that value to the wrong person inside the business, and build obviously multiple relationships. If it's a bigger business, if you're just dealing with a CMO, try and build a relationship with the person above her or the person below her or somebody else at least within there, because like I said, the average tenure of that marketing manager is 2 years as a rule. And don't forget to collect proof on the way through. Grab your case studies, ask for that at the point where their energy is highest and they are most delighted with your results. We talk about the sweet spot. We talk about getting the client to the sweet spot as quickly as possible. Sean Ellis on his podcast the other day was talking about this, the idea of time to value. Yeah, how quickly can you deliver value to somebody, which for a SaaS like Optmyzr or something like that is massively important, right? You can get people to get into the trial or go test it out, but if they can't figure out how to use it really quickly and get value out of it really quickly, then they'll churn. Same with clients. You got to get them to that sweet spot, build the emotional bank account, as Stephen Covey used to say, and build that as quickly as possible and get them to that point where they trust you and you are that trusted advisor. Pinch Crunch, I'm not going to talk about, I haven't got enough time, but that's a model from Manager Tools, the podcast that I mentioned last week. Essentially, as soon as things start going a little bit wrong, address it. Don't ignore it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Go talk to your client before it becomes a crunch. Very, very quickly on firing clients, we talked about this already a little bit. My main rule is if they're rude, they're gone. I may give them a second chance because maybe they're just having a bad day Maybe they didn't realize that they were being rude, but I have fired more than one client for just, I will not tolerate somebody jumping on the phone and yelling at my team and being rude. That's just not acceptable, and not something I'm willing to tolerate. And I don't remember who said the line, but whatever you're willing to tolerate is what you get. So you've got to draw the line somewhere, and you cannot, it's a bit like parenting, I guess. You cannot, if you set that line, you can't be wishy-washy about it. We talked about this last week. We talked about the 4 different types of freedom. Freedom of purpose. Work with people that you want to work with. Please do not chase the almighty dollar. Do not say, oh, God, I hate working with this person. Or every time you look at the phone and you see who it is, you go, oh, God, I don't want to talk to that person. But they pay really well. Get rid of them. Give them to someone else, or at least charge pitter tax, pain in the ass tax. Like, at least price it so that for the time being you can cope with that. But ultimately, just don't work with those people that you don't want to work with. It's really not worth it. It might look good on the P&L short term, but it ain't worth what it does to you, to your team, and to the business. So last one, think about the profit, not just about the revenue. But bigger than that, think about your team, think about your conscience, think about the fact that you just want to sleep soundly. For me, that is super important stuff. So, action steps for this week. Architect the experience. Go get the team around a whiteboard and start with them, start with the customer, the prospect. What's the experience we want them to have through that sales process, through the onboarding process? The way I do this is I draw a line across the middle of the whiteboard, and above the line is them, and below the line is us. And I start above the line. What's the experience that I want them to have? And this all comes from Dean Jackson, the dream come true experience. I think it's profit activator number 5 on his 8 profit activators. Plot that out in as much detail as you can above the line. Now figure out what systems you need inside the business to deliver that experience. So, the bottle of bubbly when they become a client, the handwritten thank you card, what emails get sent when, how you ask for access to analytics and Google Merchant Center and all of that stuff. To that level of detail, plot all of that out. And then go add some value. Add some value to your prospects on the way in, talk to them about the other areas of the business, add some value to your JVs and your partnerships, to the people that are referring to you, to the podcasters or the people you do webinars for, or the people whose stages you want to go speak on. Go find some of those partnerships. It's really not that hard. If you're an AdWords agency, go find the SEO only agency. If you only do AdWords, find the guy that only does Facebook. If you don't want to do video, then find the guys that are doing great YouTube stuff. Find the Magento guys. Find the roofing guy. Find whoever it is, the clinic software guys. Somebody that's already got the customer that you want. But first, you've got to get very clear on who is that ideal client. Who do you want? And this is kind of the same as go create value, but go create useful content for them and for that stuff. And I'm 51 seconds before the top of the hour. Just a reminder, if you want to come and join us at Agency Savvy and get more training like this on how to grow your business over the coming months, I plan to do more stuff around finances as well, which I think is a bit of a hole in the offering we have currently, as well as obviously all of our stuff around courses on Google AdWords, on Data Studio, analytics, Tag Manager, and a very, very vibrant community of like-minded marketers. If you're into that sort of thing, we would love to have you come and join us. And Fred, thank you for having me for these 3 webinars. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for doing these, Mike, and for taking us behind the screens at your business and teaching us what we can do better. So I'm going to launch one more poll if people want to know more about Mike's business or Optmyzr. So, this is the Optmyzr mailing list that we invited, but I do realize some people are not that familiar with us. So we have PPC management tools to make your agency more effective. So if you want to learn a bit about that, click that button right there. Or Agency Savvy, so obviously there's a lot of training there that Mike does on an ongoing basis. So that's some great stuff if you want to keep in touch with us. So we're at the top of the hour. What we'll do is we'll take any of the questions we had and answer those via email. Also in the Facebook group that we have, so we have a Facebook group for super optimizers. And Mike, I believe you have a private Facebook group as well for Agency Savvy, so really good
yes.
discussions. But yeah, let us know if you want us to follow up, and thank you so much for attending. And have a fantastic Wednesday in most of the world and Thursday in Australia.
Thanks, mate. See you
Bye now.
soon.